Okay, if you're unfamiliar with the basic trimming process, you're going to want to find my intro to trimming video and watch that first. But I want to show you how to trim a donut form because it can be a little bit trickier, especially in terms of the centering. So I of course want to line the donut form up with the rings on the wheel head as best as I can. And then just like you would for any other form, you're going to use your needle tool to create a line on the bottom of the form. Now, of course, when I trim this will later turn into the side of the teapot form. Now, what is very important to remember is what you should be looking at is the relationship between the line that you applied with a needle tool to the outside edge of the form. That's how you judge which direction to move it. Do not pay attention to the line between this inner circle and the needle tool line. So you always want to move from the wider side to the skinnier side. So I'm going to move it just a tiny bit that direction. And then just like I would any other form, I'm going to smooth out the old line and then draw a new line. You can see that it's a little wider over here than here. So I'm going to move it just a tiny bit that direction. It is important to just move a little at a time. Otherwise, you're going to constantly be going back and forth and back and forth. So now I'm looking pretty equal on all sides. So I'm going to take my clay and go ahead and brace it down. I do want to be trimming this side in the round. So you want to make sure that you're really pushing that clay down, holding the form in place, moving it away from where you're going to trim. You do not want the clay that's bracing your form down to get in the way. So I usually brace the form in 3 points. Same thing applies here. I always do a little wiggle test. So it's up to you what makes you feel more comfortable. You can use either a loop tool or a trimming tool. I think I'm going to start with the trimming tool and then move to the loop tool, but you can trim the entire form with just the loop tool. It does not matter if you start on the outside of the form or the inner circle, but I've got quite a bit of clay to remove from this inner part, so that's why I chose to use the trimming tool. So now I'm going to switch to the loop tool, which is what most of you have in your toolkit. So I'm having the tool snag that inner part of the circle, and this dark brown clay is very prone to that snag of the trimming tool. So I'm going to just hold that tool really still, go a little bit slower. So where I would usually create a foot ring, I'm actually going to trim this form completely in the round. There is an uneven area on here. You can see it bumps up here. So I'm going to trim that raised area off to even it out. So to do that, you just hold your tool still. Just the corner of the tool, the outside corner of the tool will touch. And you can see how it's now removing that raised clay to even out the bottom. So you cannot just let that tool just glide along that whole base until it is even out. Now I can go ahead and trim this in the round. Again, I'm using the corner of the tool. So I have a little area that indents down, and so I will even that out a little bit more. Make sure I'm not going through the bottom. now I'm really focusing on rounding the other side. You can see it's starting to round, which is what I want, so that when it stands upright, it will have a base and it looks finished on both sides. So while the curve may not be identical on each side, at least it's well refined on each side. But I want that curve to be as similar as I can get it. Now I have a nice rounded side to the donut form, but I'm not finished yet. You do want to make sure that you take a damp sponge and refine, because the other side is definitely refined. You can also get on there with a red rib tool. So now I have trimmed the donut form. So when I take it off of there, because I just smoothed this surface, be very careful about that surface. I now have a form that is rounded on both sides that I can easily turn into a teapot, a vase, whatever form in the end I'm attempting to create.